It started when I crashed my car. Well, really? It started after. I had broken several bones and a few ribs, and hit my head on the steering wheel so hard I saw stars. The whole experience after was a blur, honestly. All I can remember is the smell of smoke steaming from the front of my car, seeing the tree I had crashed into, and being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. There was a lot of blood. I had been lying down in my hospital bed, trying to sleep a few days after, connected to what seems like too many IVs, when I saw it in the dim lighting of the room. Yellow eyes. Yellow eyes were behind the air vent above me. I blinked once, twice, 3 times. The yellow eyes were still there. They were wide and had no pupils, and were staring straight at me. I began to scream and tried scrambling out of the bed. Damn, these IVs. I needed to get away from whatever the hell that thing was. The yellow eyes didn't even blink once. They just kept staring at me with utterly no emotion. I couldn't believe how wide they were. A nurse rushed in while I was trying to remove the IVs in a panic. Honey, what's wrong?" she asked, eyes wide as she tried to make sense of the scene, and then to run over when she saw me trying to take my IVs out, placing her hands on mine to stop me. "Honey, you can't take those out. Talk to me, what's wrong?" I felt like I couldn't breathe. I didn't want to look at the vent. I began chest heaving. "There's something in that vent," I exclaimed wildly, pointing up to the vent, but not daring to look again myself. The nurse furrowed her eyebrows as she looked up at the vent, and then looked over at me in what felt like a mixture of pity and confusion. "Sweetheart, there's nothing there." "No way." "No, that's impossible. They were just there." I stopped to finally look back up to the wretched vent and gasped, and then screamed. The eyes were closer to the vent now, almost pressed against it, and I could finally see the outlines of a face. A horrific face. Not horrific in the sense that it was ugly, but it literally only had eyes. No nose, no mouth, just a pitch black face with wide, yellow eyes, and pitch black in the sense of it had no color. It looked like a shadow. "It's still there," I cried, pushing the nurse away and doing my best to get the hell out of this hospital bed. "You can't see it?" The nurse was visibly panicking now, but took a deep breath and pushed a button on her badge. "Miss Adler, there's absolutely nothing there." She began moving forward and placed her hands on my shoulders. "I want you to breathe with me, okay?" I couldn't. I just couldn't. Not when that thing was still staring at me. Not when I could see those terrifying eyes in my peripheral vision. No, I can't. How can you not see it?" I screamed, writhing under her touch and pushing her away again. I needed to get out of this bed, out of this room, out of this hospital. I ripped the final IV out of my arm. More nurses came flooding through, security too. The nurse, Cindy I learned her name was, began explaining the situation. What had that button she pushed been? A panic button? I wasn't dangerous. How could none of these people see that monster above my bed? They began to talk to me. I was out of bed now because I simply refused to be under that thing. Blood was dripping down my arm, but I didn't feel it. My pulse was racing too fast. I didn't even hear much of what they said. Something about lowering the morphine. That maybe that's why I was hallucinating. They agreed to move me to another room, which I wasn't entirely happy about. But I couldn't exactly walk away from the hospital in this condition. And funnily enough, I didn't see that horrible creature the rest of my stay there. I began to believe it really may have been the morphine and the other medications they had me on that made me hallucinate like that. I was released 4 days later and given some pain meds to cope with the pain. It felt good to be out, even though it was a hallucination. I had felt really uncomfortable with sitting in the same hospital that I saw that awful thing in. I was getting ready for bed at my humble little trailer home I shared with my sister, who was currently away in London. She had saved all year to travel there, when I dropped my phone. "Damn," I muttered. I had been trying to brush my teeth and text at the same time, which obviously wasn't the best choice with a cast on my left arm, but these pain meds were making me feel like Wonder Woman. No wonder people get addicted to opioids. I turned around and started slowly crouching down to pick it up. Damn broken ribs, when my blood ran cold. Eyes. Yellow eyes under the vent my phone had fallen onto. It had fallen screen first, so the light illuminated its shadowy face. It had no mouth, but I heard a low cackle that sounded almost maniacal, inhuman. A bony, ghastly hand slid through the cracks of the vent and clenched the metal. It started pushing against it. I screamed. Screw the phone, screw the toothbrush. I ran into the living room, grabbed my home phone, and booked it outside. My injured body was screaming at me, but I didn't care. What the hell? What the hell? I called 911, breath heaving and trembling in fear. I told the 911 operator to please hurry. There was something in my house. I couldn't think straight. Then, something cold, so terribly cold, wrapped around my neck. And then, a crack, as something re-broke my arm. I dropped the phone. I screamed bloody murder, but couldn't move. I was paralyzed. I felt something just as cold slide around my body, like a snake, and I was sobbing. "Please," I begged over my hiccups. "Please stop. Please, someone help me." But no one did. Of course no one did. The closest neighbor was 2 miles away. Where the hell were the police? God, where the hell were the police? Then, the cold traveled up my chest. The last thing I saw was its face. So close to me, we were almost touching. Its yellow eyes and a mouth appearing out of nowhere. Not a mouth, more like a hole, as it got wider and wider, and an awful screech. The cops pulled up then, but I was nowhere to be found. I woke up in the middle of a dark field a week later. I went to the cops and my family, who had been searching for me, and none of us can find any plausible reason how any of this happened. But my skin keeps getting darker, my mouth is getting harder to open, and my nose is shrinking. I'm getting worried. I feel like I'm slowly losing myself to the yellow-eyed monster. I still see their yellow eyes in my vent, but every time I take a double take and look again, they're gone. Please, help.